Good morning, Year 5. I can't believe we're at Wednesday already. So we're going to have a look at Chapter 4 today, and we're going to look at the vocabulary in this chapter. So I've split Chapter 4 up into two sessions again. So we're going to read the beginning of the chapter today, stop at a certain page, and then we will carry on reading tomorrow. So I've made a note of some of the words in these few pages that we might need to just check up the definition for so that we are 100% of what our words mean in this book. Okay, let's get going. Chapter 4. How come you're looking after the wolves anyway? Stella asked Shay, as the two of them set about properly securing the canvas walls of the kennel. Dad says a proper explorer should always see to his animals before seeing to himself, he replied. Seems only fair. Besides, it's easy for me because I speak their language. He pulled the silver wolf pendant free of his shirt, and Stella realised that this was no ordinary pendant at all, but a whisperer's wolf, a magical clockwork creature. You're a wolf whisperer, she said. Felix had told her about whisperers, amazing people who could speak to animals, but were really quite rare, and hardly anyone was born with these gifts these days. Felix had once met a man who'd claimed to be a frog whisperer and carried a small frog around with him in a box, telling anyone who would listen that it was a genius who could solve all the problems of the civilized world. But the frog seemed very uninterested in whatever conversation the man was trying to have with it, and Felix wasn't convinced that it was really a frog whisperer at all. Can I see the wolf? Stella asked, a little breathlessly. The ship gave another rolling lurch, and she grabbed hold of a rope to steady herself. Sure. Shay slipped the pendant from around his neck and dropped it into Stella's palm. The animal had been sitting up with its eyes closed, but as soon as it touched her skin, it lay down in her hand one quick movement, its nose between its paws. The silver was warm, and Stella could feel the soft thump of a tiny heartbeat deep within it. Animals like these were only given to whisperers, who had been rigorously tested and vetted and verified by the Royal Guide of Whisperers. Otherwise, there was nothing to stop any old person from putting a frog in a box and claiming he could speak to it. How does being a whisperer work? Stella asked. I think it's whatever I want to say in my mind, and the wolves hear me, Shay said with a shrug. And then they speak back to me inside my head too. Like this. Look. Shay turned his head towards the nearest wolf pen, and although he didn't speak out loud, Stella could tell that he was talking to one of the wolves, because the wolf pendant in her hand moved. The silver wolf opened its eyes, which were revealed to be tiny red jewels that gleamed in the lamplight. Stella saw a nearby wolf, the reddish one that she'd saved earlier, suddenly prick its ears up, raise its head and look straight at Shay. She says, Thanks a bunch for helping me earlier, Shay said, turning to Stella. She thought you were very brave. I did too. Stella shrugged, although she couldn't help being pleased by the compliment. I wish I was a wolf whisperer, she said, handing the pendant back. Or any kind of whisperer, really. A polar bear whisperer would definitely be the best choice. She could have proper conversations with Gruff then, and she was quite sure he would have been plenty of fascinating opinions to share and interesting things to say. The ship was rolling hard enough to send her sprawling to Stella, sat down on the nearest haystack. Have you ever been to the Royal Guild of Whisperers? She asked. Shane nodded as he replaced the whisperer's wolf around his neck and joined her on the haystack. Yeah, my mum took me when I was tested, he said, settling into a cross-legged position. They had an entire cabinet there with pendants from different animals. Some of them were pretty unusual, like the duck-billed platypus. And then there was a sheep and a sloth and a mole, he went on, counting them off on his fingers. So we've got the independent read here. So I want you to carry on reading these next few pages independently. And what I'd like you to do is spot those keywords that I've highlighted and then continue to the task at the end of these slides. So your task is to research and find out the definitions for those words. It is very important that we understand them for us to fully understand the book as well. So you could draw a picture, if it is possible to draw a picture for that word. You could break it down, just as we do in our spelling sessions, or you could try putting the word into a definition sentence, okay? So once you have done that, I'd like you to take a picture of it and post it onto Class Dojo so I can see that you have gained some understanding of our key vocabulary from these first few pages of Chapter 4.